The star of the show,
Yeah, the
the
star.
star of this episode, our really, really good friend Michael Nix, who is an expert on Alabama ghost stories. He has appeared on your local Birmingham and Tuscaloosa television stations doing some of these stories. So we have a star with us, a haint star.
That's right.
So we are going to give him the honors and the controls of the show. He's going to show you some pictures and other good stuff. So whenever you're ready, we can add in your slideshow to the stream here. Are you ready, sir?
I am. Are you controlling that? There we go. Okay.
Hey.
All right, sit back and enjoy. Nixie is going to run the rest of the show, and we are passengers in his car, screaming for our lives.
Yes.
Much like last night.
Oh, yeah, nobody would ever do that because whatever they're saying about my driving is complete and utter hogwash.
It was much like last night. We didn't tell what we did last night.
No, we didn't.
Oh, if you remember, and this is part of your presentation, maybe at least from last year. Last year, Nixie told you about the Homewood Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you that great story. So go back and find last year's Halloween episode. You can find the clips on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@BamaGeeks. They're in their own playlist, and we'll be adding this year's stories to that playlist as well. But we went on a paranormal investigation last night with Scare of Alabama at the Homewood Public Library, and we had an absolute blast. It was a lot of fun. We're going to save you the details for whatever happened during that ghost hunt. We'll save you those we're going to put out a video of that as well. But it was really cool. A lot of people showed up, and it was a fundraiser for the Homewood Public Library, and we got to hear some really spooky things in there at night.
We did.
So make sure you look for that video. We'll put it up on our YouTube channel and all our other social media channels, which we will plug all those at the end of the presentation. So, Nixie, this is all you, my man.
All right. Well, good deal. Well, thanks for having me again. So why do these guys call me now for a second year as an expert on all these stories? Well, maybe it's because the only thing my mother could get me to read as a child was ghost stories. I read probably one of the biggest treasures of Alabama literature, and that was 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey in like fourth grade. And I've probably read it cover to cover at least twice in fourth grade. So she was just ecstatic to get me to read. But since then, the stories I like to tell is because I love ghost stories, and I worked in an industry where I was able to try to freak people out a little bit, because maybe that's the other thing about telling ghost stories is you want to get a reaction out of somebody. And
driving.
Exactly. And they're usually they can be pretty funny sometimes. So I will say this though, whether I believe in ghosts or not, I report, you decide. So you can try to figure out whether I really believe in ghosts or not. Good luck coming to a firm conclusion. And I will also add this too, because of some comments that was made last year. Anywhere in any of the stories that I tell, and maybe it's because I give more credit than I should to humanity, but please remember, if any of these places are on private property, please don't just hop out and go do your own investigation.
Please.
You probably aren't going to be welcome. It's almost as if you see a house for sale and you go try to bust in the back door to just look at the kitchen really quick because you're really interested. It's probably not.
And if you do, make sure you tell them Nixie said it was okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Just remember, we live in Alabama, and if you would like to join the afterlife of which you're seeking, jump onto somebody's private property.
Exactly. So the good news is some of my stories this year are actually public locations, but we'll see. So use good judgment, use common sense.
Of course.
All right, so let's jump into it. So first story this year is going to be down in Andalusia, Alabama, South Alabama, at Covington County, and the old jail. Brock Parker spent a little bit of time there. I want you guys to know that. Even though the jail closed in 1970, but his mother had gotten fed up with him and was like, I'll show you, and just threw him in there for a night.
She probably haunts the place now.
But so the jail was built sometime around 1900. That's when it was when it was put into use. It was in use for 70 years, up until 1970, when it was closed and it was moved somewhere else in Andalusia, of course. But it was added about 19 years later, 1989. It was added to the National Register of Historical Places in the United States. So it still stands. I don't know if the fence is still around it that you see in this picture. I think maybe they've done a little bit of work, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But with any building like this, people who like a good ghost story, and just with buildings that you might see around that you're going to say, that just looks creepy, is going to breed some kind of ghost story naturally. Nothing was really ever said about Covington County Jail while it was in use in terms of the amount of hauntedness or how haunted it might actually be. And back in those days, most of the county jails, if not throughout the country, at least in some places in the South, were still executing their own prisoners after trials. In Covington County, I did not read that specifically, but I assume more than likely they did. But way after it had been a jail, 2009, there were 2 investigations that I'm aware of that have been at least documented. One was in 2009, where some folks go into the jail to do an investigation. Paranormal researchers do an investigation. And it just so happens they're with a police officer from either Andalusia or Covington County Sheriff's Department. I'm not sure which. And they were just part of the investigation. They weren't there in really an official capacity, other than they might have had to be the person to let them in the building. But they were there to be part of it too. And they go around doing the different things that the researchers will do, trying to get some kind of reaction out of whatever spirit may be in the building. And they don't really get much in person until they go back and listen to some audio recordings. And at some point, one of the researchers just asks out in the blue, "Are you upset that a police officer is here?" And they don't hear anything. Then they go back and listen to the audio recording, and they hear "yeah" as an answer to that question. So that happened. Coincidentally, and that's about the only really good part of this, but coincidentally, sometime, I would presume this was in the early 1950s, Hank Williams Sr. spent the night there one night. Because he was drunk and disorderly. But what led to him being arrested was he had Hank Jr. with him, who was a very small child, probably almost infant age, in the car while he was in a club in Andalusia performing. Somebody found Hank Jr. in the car, called the police, figured out who the dad was. Hank Sr., of course, was drunk, disorderly, took him to jail, took Hank Jr. for the night in protective custody. Of course, it was all okay by the next day. I'm sure Hank Sr. had to pay a fine, whatever. But Hank Sr. did spend the night in Covington County Jail, at least once.
That's nuts. Hey, not surprising to hear that.
But related, Redmont Hotel in Birmingham.
I was going to say, yeah, this is a good tie-in.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Birmingham, you've heard of Redmont Hotel, and you've probably heard a few stories there. But why is it related to Covington County Jail in Andalusia? Is because the last night of Hank Williams Sr.'s life was spent at the Redmont Hotel before he left for his trip to Virginia or West Virginia, wherever it was that he ultimately died in the backseat of a car, at least on the way there.
Right.
Before he left for that trip, he stayed at Redmont Hotel.
I didn't know that.
Built in 1925. I didn't know that until earlier today. It was built in 1925, and a lot of people say that one of the hauntings that goes on at Redmont Hotel is Hank Sr. I didn't know that either. I had heard it was supposedly haunted, but I didn't know by who specifically, and was pretty surprised by that.
So his ghost walked back. It's like, I'm going
apparently,
back to
yeah.
It was
didn't
a
make it
lonesome
to his
highway.
final location. Yeah, exactly. But guests have reported among other things, a small dog roaming the hallways, furniture or bags being moved around, and doors opening and closing.
Is the hotel still in operation?
Yes, it's actually one of the more affluent hotels in downtown.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the nice ones. It's a Hyatt, I believe now.
Do we know what room he was in?
I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody knows.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we might need a field trip one night.
Dude, I want to go stay there and pet the ghost puppy. That sounds awesome.
That is Redmont Hotel, and it was renovated. I forget. Go back to my notes because I thought there for a time it was pushing being derelict, but
there. Yeah,
I
there
don't think
was.
it was.
Yeah, there was some talk too. At
Yeah.
one time that I think that it was looking at shutting down, but
What is
Yeah.
what's
That's
the
just downtown Birmingham. It's fine.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the hotel near Little Five Points?
That's right now it's at Indigo, Hotel Indigo,
Yeah.
but it's been a couple of things. You're talking about the one in Southside, close to the right before you right in the fountain area, correct?
Yeah, because my my ex-wife and I stayed there one night. We had to bring my son up for a doctor's appointment, and we wound up staying there. That's a neat little hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think you're right, the Hotel Indigo, but it was something else
Yeah.
before that.
It's
stayed.
been quite a few different
remember.
things. Yeah.
It's
and-
an interesting hotel. It's like very tiny hallways to get through.
Yeah.
It looks like it looks like something that would be haunted.
I stayed at the Redmont one night years ago. We had some friends in town. There was a concert going on, and just happened to, and just the effort, of just being there and staying with everybody that had come into town for the concert. I
Mhm.
did spend the night out there one time. It's a beautiful hotel.
Might have to check that out one night.
And not that far from there. I didn't put it in this presentation, but not far from there, of course, is the Tutwiler, which
Mhm.
is also about as haunted, supposedly, as the Redmont.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so kind of a new one on me. I don't think I've ever heard of this one, but the Boyington Oak in Mobile. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
as the story, and that's the Boyington Oak.
There you go.
Say it 3 times fast.
Oh, good lord! I had this rehearsed before because I knew I was going to screw it up. So that's the actual tree that you see, and the story begins in 1833. It's a southern live oak, if you need to be specific. But Connecticut native Charles Boyington rented a room at a local boarding house with a guy named Nathaniel Frost. I'm not sure if he was from Connecticut too or not. Who was later found stabbed to death in a nearby graveyard.
Mm.
Boyington was supposedly the last person to see Frost, and Frost allegedly owed Boyington money, which led to the working out the motive for murder, at least in the eyes of police. So they assumed Boyington was the one who committed the murder, and he was arrested and then executed by hanging, but maintained his innocence. And Boyington allegedly, sorry, I think my notes sort of ran together. So Boyington allegedly went to be hanged. Of course, he was maintaining his innocence, but said that a oak tree would grow out of his heart and on top of his grave, and that would prove his innocence.
Whoa.
And as the legend goes, the tree grew because that tree's in a cemetery. It's hard to tell, and I couldn't find. There's another picture. Let me skip ahead because I got one more, slightly more modern picture. It's hard to tell that it's around a cemetery, if it is, unless he was just buried there on the spot wherever he was hanged
It
or
looks like
executed.
it's like a building behind it now.
Yeah, I think that's across the street from the other picture I had.
Okay.
I think at least. And yeah, so that's where his grave is, and the tree still stands, and that tree is pretty well 200 years old,
So he's under that tree.
allegedly. Yeah.
That's a legend, huh?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
that's the legend. And the reason people think the area is haunted is some people claim they hear crying or whispering from right around the oak, and it fuels the ideas that the story Boyington is still seeking vindication.
Is that the tree they found a Mobile leprechaun in?
I don't know.
That was
They
incredible.
never got to dig that tree up, so I know that guy tried to get a backhoe in there.
He wants the gold. He wants vindication.
He got
Where to
hold of the
go?
wrong stuff.
Crackhead got hold of the wrong stuff up in that tree.
I'm currently looking at Google Maps on here at the Boyington Oak, and it's like across the street from a church, and looks like it's right near a graveyard.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, there's a FedEx truck in the shot, so you take that
Oh man.
Oh man.
Oh, FedEx driving us crazy right into our graves.
real. And you can look it up on Google Maps. Type in Boyington Oak, and it brings you. You can do a street view of it.
Okay.
All right. Well, next up, University of Montevallo's main hall.
Ooh.
Some of you have potentially heard of this one, as of course any university campus has got a ghost story or two. This one's
Oh, big
pretty.
time.
This one's pretty bad. This was at the time, I believe, a girls' dorm, and a young lady named Condi Cunningham came to school there. Back then, it was known as the Alabama Girls Industrial School. I'm not sure when they changed the name to University of Montevallo. This was in 1908, February 4th, 1908 specifically. She was making hot chocolate over a sterno heater. And somehow, during the process, the heater was knocked over and her gown caught fire. And she
No.
ran screaming down the hallway outside. Instead of stop, dropping, and rolling, she just kept running, which intensified the fire. And it just made everything worse. And then she collapsed at the end of the hallway that she was running down.
Aren't you
And she
thankful for
died.
your Keurig now, Jess?
I am.
Yeah. And she later died on February 6th and is actually buried in Birmingham in Elmwood Cemetery.
Okay.
But the legend goes, she's been known to come into the shower, the girl shower, and scream at the top of her lungs, just randomly. Students will feel wind when windows are closed, and she will run down hall screaming as if she's still on fire. Windows will apparently open and close on their own, and people will sometimes hear a voice say, "Help me." Also, students would not stay in the dorm and have repeated they could see likenesses in the room's door, like in the grain of the wood. And one of which had been removed and was in storage. From the story that I read, the person who wrote about it is actually Dr. Alan Brown. I'll show you an image of his book here shortly, who is one of the guys I dealt with in the past with some of my stories. Had actually seen the door. They had pulled the door off, I don't know how long ago. The door came off that room. But they had put it in storage. He was able to see it. And he said, you've got to use your imagination a little bit. But maybe it's there, and, you never know. Maybe it was there for somebody else. I actually knew somebody who stayed in that dorm who told me that story one time. I actually had been in that dorm one time. Pretty freaky.
Yeah.
Well, Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter ain't got nothing on her.
Yeah.
Dude, I was thinking the same thing. We've got our own version of Moaning Myrtle. I need to. One of my really good friends that I graduated with, her daughter is currently at Montevallo. I need to see if she's heard the legend and gone in there.
Yeah.
Didn't they remove the door? Or something about there's something I heard about the door itself. Like
yeah, I'm not sure which version of the door. I don't know how many doors they go through.
Right.
But they did pull one down and it was in storage. Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just basically the faculty just got tired of people complaining about it, so they just took the door
Probably,
off.
They took it off, replaced it. It's like here. So,
right.
I don't know why they just didn't paint over it.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Face would have shown up throughout the paint. Through the
Possibly.
paint. I mean, it's kind of like they keep trying to redo the window over in Carrollton at the courthouse.
Yeah.
And his face kept showing up, according to legend.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind now, University of Montevallo is kind of it's an artsy college. So, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to have some student who really wants to cause a scene potentially put a face or something back on the door.
It's possible. Very possible. This is why I report and you decide. All right, next up is the Highway 5 Ghost. And I should clarify, this is the Alabama Highway 5 Ghost. And yeah, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't, because who knows in what county, what state, what country you may have heard of a very similar story in. But as the legend goes, this was around Lynn, Alabama, which is in Winston County. This is between the town of Natural Bridge, that's in Winston County, very near Franklin County, so northwest Alabama, and Jasper, Alabama. But the story goes, the teenage girl was returning home from prom with her boyfriend, and they got into an argument. She got out of the vehicle along the highway to walk the rest of the way home, and when she didn't arrive home, she was found in a ditch the next morning, having been hit apparently by a large truck. And what brings the ghost story into this is, if an 18-wheeler travels down Highway 5 on a rainy night, she will climb on the side of the truck and peek inside to see if the driver is the one that killed her.
Okay.
I have heard
And
that.
yeah, and apparently this could happen not necessarily at Lynn, but anywhere between Natural Bridge and Jasper. But I think the story is more focused at Lynn.
Okay.
And maybe that's where, if anybody has really seen this, that's where they're seeing it at. And I did see where somebody had said their father or something had gotten the habit of not driving Highway 5 anymore because they were a truck driver and would go other routes because they did see it. And they were spooked enough that they would go out of their way not to drive through Lynn, at least on Highway 5. So
I will tell you, having lived off of Highway 5 for a portion of my life, yeah, the day cab drivers like folks who deliver like log truck drivers and stuff, they don't care. They still drive that road. They don't care. It's just whatever they can do to get there the fastest. So,
yep.
Although I am curious if the ghost is there, I wonder if you could sneak by it with like one of those Tesla semis. Like it's real quiet, you know. Maybe you can sneak by her. She pops up and she's like, "Man, that's real nice on the inside. Good job, man."
It's very possible. All right. That's our Highway 5 ghost. Whoops.
What?
Wait
Wait a minute.
Sorry, I forgot. There was a second slide. So that's
that's
supposed to be the
cute.
track
Oh,
saying
that.
no riders to the ghost.
Oh, love
there.
it. Porky
it's
Pig
covering up
for
some
our
of
audio
that.
listeners.
Yeah. So,
That's
from
great.
Cartoon Jeepers Creepers for reference. All right. The
Oh,
Lyric Theater.
Ooh, the
Yay.
lyric.
Lyric.
Beautiful place.
So, for those of you who are real familiar with the Lyric, you know that this was derelict for a very long time in
Yes.
downtown Birmingham.
Very long time. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was built. It was opened. I don't know when they started building it, but it was opened in 1914. I didn't realize it was open as long as it was, but it closed in 1980. So it was around for a long time where theaters are concerned, especially as bad a shape as this one was when they finally started working on it.
Yeah.
And it was reopened. It had been remodeled for several years. So I don't remember what year they started, but they finally finished and reopened it in 2016. So in 2011, some paranormal investigators stayed overnight in the Lyric, and on the fourth floor, someone was touched on the shoulder by an unseen hand. Nobody had any idea who caused that. And footsteps can be heard on the stairs between the first level and the first floor balcony. And that was about it. There aren't very many stories about the Lyric where it's like really, really haunted, supposedly. And that's really all that has been conjured up since that I could find.
Much like the Alabama theater too, with the legend of, hearing the ghost stories, from that theater too, probably very similar to what they've experienced at the Lyric.
Yeah, they
Right.
probably have the ghost crossing the street. I mean, it's right there next to
Yeah,
each
yeah,
other.
they're just going,
You
Very
take this
likely.
building
Well-
tonight, I'll take the Lyric.
Well, at least the ghost doesn't have to deal with the parking around there.
That's
Yes.
true. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
My text is covered up again. I don't know why it did that. That is supposed to be a P that is covered up. Pegues Ghost. And I am presuming it is pronounced Piggies because there is a creek near the area I live in that is pronounced Piggies, and that's how I've always pronounced it. So I'm assuming it is the same. Pegues Ghost.
Okay.
We're
what
not
this
talking
is
about
called?
10 little piggies. We're
That's right. Or maybe we are. I don't know.
Pegues.
Pegue. Yeah. And this is in Cahaba, Alabama. So the first state capital of Alabama when it became a state, not just a territory, but the very first state capital was at Cahaba. And it was a reasonably affluent area for at least a reasonable amount of time. The capital was only there for a brief period. Up until, let's see, from about 1819 at statehood. Right after statehood is when they started building it. Until 1826 when it was moved to Tuscaloosa because of flooding. I don't know just how bad the flooding really was, or if people in the state were just looking for an excuse to move the capital to Tuscaloosa. But it was moved later in 1826, and a lot of it almost it was almost deserted, but there were still plantations around Cahaba. There were still quite a few residents around, especially pre-Civil War, and this occurred during the Civil War. So Pegues was a person, Colonel C.C. Pegues, who was a Confederate Colonel, had a plantation there, had a garden that had a maze in it. And the legends, there are two of these. The one that has been spoken about more often is the one I'll go over first. Legends are that the orb, as you see, there's that ball of light just inside those reeds, appeared. Make sure I'm saying that's right. Appeared within about 2 weeks before Colonel Pegues was killed at a battle in Virginia. It was seen by a Confederate soldier who was there, I believe, at a party that was being held at that house with his sweetheart, who had gone out to the garden to go through the maze. And they saw the orb of light. And the soldier tried to, it was pretty close to him, as the story goes. And the soldier tried to jump and grab the orb of light and never could. It kept moving around. And nobody could ever really explain what caused that. The other legend's basically the same thing, but that Pegues was already dead, and this was his ghost. So there's two different legends that go along with this. But that is the story of that. That house, of course, is long gone, as most everything else in Cahaba, except for a few things.
Yeah.
It's now
Yeah,
largely a ghost town.
Yeah, the bad part about where they settled it, and from my understanding, the reason that didn't stick around the way it was because they settled it right in an area that is very, very prone to flooding, like very prone. So, no settlement was ever going to last very long. As a matter of fact, if you go there now, after a major rain, there's a good chance you're going to go there and it's going to be all underwater.
Yeah.
So,
It actually is at the corner of where the Alabama River crosses through, but the Cahaba River empties. So it's at that confluence. And if, of course, like Kevin was saying, it's kind of a low-lying area too. So the likelihood of it flooding is pretty good. There was actually a prison there at one time too. It was a prison during the Civil War holding Union soldiers who were prisoners of war. And there are stories about them not being totally flooded out, but that the prison, at least the floor of it, would flood out occasionally. They'd be walking through water, having to tread water inside the jail. And that was actually very close to the edge of the Alabama River where it was located.
Okay.
Want to go to dinner with a ghost? Well, you can, because Gaines Ridge Dinner Club is actually in business.
Oh, cool.
Every Thursday through Saturday from 5:30 to 9 p.m. It is actually evidently a really good restaurant. Being in the area that it's in, it's very pretty rural area. Camden is not very large. It's in Wilcox County, southwest Alabama, the northern edge of southwest Alabama. This is below Selma. But is a really good restaurant. It has been in existence since at least the 1820s. It's been in use ever since as a house, and it became a restaurant in 1985. And evidently, no real ghost stories come out of this place until it became a restaurant. So people who know of the ghost stories just immediately think, oh, well, it must have gained more interest with the ghost when it became a restaurant. I guess they're hungry. Who knows?
Or maybe the ghost is hungry.
Right. Yeah. But a woman has been seen, as the story goes, a woman has been seen floating past windows and heard screaming. Baby's cry has been heard when no children are present. And the aroma of pipe smoke has been smelled just at random times.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it is very much open. I think they like to talk about the story too. Seems like I watched something several years ago where there was an interview with people who worked at the place or who owned it at the time, who they played it up, and they may have even had like a mystery dinner occasionally too. That's probably back in the 1990s. I would assume they still do something similar because you can Google it and find stuff all over the place about it. But their food is supposedly really top notch. It's probably a really good place to try out if you have a reason to go to Camden, Alabama on a Thursday through Saturday between 5:30 and 9 p.m.
That might be the one reason to go. Yeah.
It's a little bit exclusive, but yeah, it might be worth the drive.
That one would be a really good one to review bomb and be like doing reviews as ghosts. The best place in the state to smoke your tobacco.
That's right.
Cannot sleep due to the patrons. 2 stars.
Right. So we're going to dial back to last year just because I thought I was going to run short on what I had, and I thought I was going to probably talk faster than maybe what I did. I thought I might needed 2 more stories just to flesh this out a little bit to make it worth everybody's while. This story is pretty popular with those who know the ghost stories in Alabama, because this is in 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the dancing ghost of Grancer Harrison.
Right.
So Grancer Harrison lived pre-Civil War, if I'm not mistaken, up until maybe 1830s or 40s. And correct me, Brock, was it Coffee County?
Kinston?
Yeah.
Kinston's in Geneva County.
Geneva. Okay. I knew it was close. I can't remember if it
Well,
was Geneva
you know
or-
what? Let me verify this. This is, and it's sad that I have to verify this. I have a cousin who lives in Kinston.
Thanks
So
a lot. That's why I was leaning on you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is Geneva.
no, it's Coffee County.
Oh, it's coffee.
Mhm,
Okay.
it's
So it's
Coffee
just,
County.
it's got to be just over the edge.
Yeah.
'cause
Yeah,
It's
it's
on
very
the other
close.
side of Samson.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking it was really close. I just couldn't
Yeah.
remember if it was Coffee or Covington County. I was getting those mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kinston is just a stone's throw away from where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed in you and James, man.
To be fair, I have not lived in Geneva County in 30 years. Oh golly, it's been that long.
Yeah, it has.
It has.
Oh
Have you taken your Geritol today?
yes, actually, and several other medications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Grancer Harrison was a plantation owner, and he loved to dance. He liked to entertain. He had near his plantation, he actually had a dance hall built, and there were regular events held there where he was the one calling the square dances, I guess it was, playing his fiddle.
Do-si-do.
Yeah. And upon his death, before his death, he planned pretty well in advance for his death. Had a lot of I think all the bricks were brought in from either Mobile or New Orleans or somewhere like that. I forget where, or Pensacola. I forget which. Somewhere near the coast, where everything was brought in. He had slaves who built the tomb, which you can kind of see there through the cover there, which no longer exists. We'll get to another picture in just a moment. But it was a covered grave, and he wanted to be buried on his feather bed with his dancing shoes on and in his finest suit. And they held to this. He was buried on his bed in his suit. And not long after he died, the partying sort of fizzled out because he wasn't there and it wasn't as much fun anymore. Not long after they stopped having things at the old dance hall that he had near his home, people started to hear at night dances being called and the sound of fiddle music, violin music being played, as if there was a party going on. So I don't know if people still hear it. I think every so often there may be a report that they hear the music being played. But there's no telling. I believe the cemetery might be on private property. I can't remember. So if you were to go to the cemetery, just be careful. If you see no trespassing signs again, do not cross into no trespassing territory, because they are probably very particular about this grave, as it has been vandalized many times over the years. The latest being in 2010. And
Why would
given
they
that-
vandalize it? Do they think that the devil's golden fiddle's in it or something?
I don't know. Poor Grancer's bones. I think the last time it was vandalized, it was blown up with dynamite.
Oh, wow.
It was like legit blown up. There are pictures on Google. I didn't use them, but you could tell there were bricks all over the place.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah, and it's probably exactly what Kevin said. Somebody probably thought there was gold in there, money or something. Why, after almost 200 years, you would think there's still anything in there after it had been vandalized more than once? And I'm sure the locals knew that too. Who knows? Probably some dumb kids.
Blowing up
Anyway.
his boogie shoes.
Anyway, and of course, there's probably not much left of him anyway in there. But because of that, they do. People who live near there do keep a very close eye on this. Of course, the covered contraption that was over the grave is long gone, because that picture earlier was from probably the 1930s, if not before that.
I need to message my cousin and find out how close he lives to this, because Kinston's not a big area.
Yeah, he's probably pretty close.
He
But
probably
that
is.
the dancing ghost of Grancer Harrison. If you do not, he was called Grancer because back then, I think grandfathers could also be referred to as grandsire. I believe I read that
Mhm.
somewhere,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just shortened. where it
Right.
was almost slang and it became Grancer and it just became his nickname. Everybody called him that.
Wait, whoa, whoa. So this guy was famous for like fiddle and dancing, and he
Yep.
didn't go with Grancer the Prancer.
Or Dasher or
Come on,
Dancer.
man.
It's possible he did. It was just lost over time.
Well, that's how he's going to live on in my memory. Grancer the
That's right.
Prancer.
Grancer the Prancer of Kinston, Alabama. Yep.
Oh, he's gonna haunt us all.
He is the last story in 13 Alabama Ghost and Jeffrey, if you ever want to read it. If you haven't already. And the last one you learned about. So we went from one, stands a chance if you've read the Ghost Stories from Alabama, you've heard of Grancer Harrison. Likely you have not heard of this one. That's the haunted radio station in Jasper. I love this one because I have a personal connection to it, not specifically with the person who lived at this house before it was a radio station, but my grandparents did because they knew the guy. But haunted radio station is no longer a radio station. It had been an insurance office for some years, and I'm not sure when the radio station went dark. And it might actually still be in operation, just not at this location. I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to check. But it was an insurance office for a bit. And last few times I have been by this location in Jasper, it was up for sale. So it may not be anything right now. This was originally built as a home. I'm not sure how old the house is. I would presume this was from about the 1920s. If you're familiar with Jasper, this is very near the old main drag of Highway 78 and the Bankhead House that is very near downtown Jasper. And almost lost my train of thought. And a man named George Vines, who was a car dealer in Jasper, actually lived in this house. George Vines lived there until about 1974, I think it was, when he died. And sometime after that, it became the radio station. Radio station, of course, was there for several years, over 30 years. And the stories were that the ghost would, as you saw, let me back up. As you see, there's this bay window here. And the control board for the radio station was actually right here. They could face out the window, the DJ could, to see what was going on outside. And in one instance, the sister of a DJ who was working a particular night drove by and said, "Hey, there was somebody standing behind you. Was there anybody there with you that night?" And they said no. And the sister nearly freaked out because she's like, there was definitely a person standing behind you. Other instances of doors opening and closing and feeling the breeze off of somebody as if they're walking by in a hallway, and the toilet flushing on its own. So some pretty crazy things. I had to dig a little bit to find a little more on George Vines and even a picture of him. And that's actually him right there. It might be a little hard to see on the PowerPoint. But he was a Mercury dealer in Jasper. Hop Price Auto Sales. I believe Hop, that was his nickname. I have no idea what his first name was his son-in-law, I think, or a business partner. I want to say it was son-in-law, who owned the dealership after that on Highway 78, on what was then called New 78 through Jasper. Not too terribly far from where Jasper Mall is today. But he was a car dealer who is apparently still in his house. His funeral, his wake was held at his house. So they think, yeah, his spirit's probably still lingering there. And the reason my grandparents actually knew the guy is because my grandfather was in the Kiwanis Club in Jasper. I think they were both in it at the same time. And my grandfather bought cars from him. So they knew each other in that regard. So pretty crazy. And that is, well, that's not going to animate. That's supposed to be an animated GIF. Anyway, so that's that. It's the end of the stories. So a few things for you to read if you don't already know. 13 Alabama Ghost and Jeffrey. I think everybody in Alabama pretty well knows that. But if
Pretty
you don't,
much, yeah.
it's written by Catherine Tucker Wyndham and Margaret Gillis Fye. Always forget Margaret. Catherine Tucker Wyndham was a state treasurer, national
She
treasurer,
was.
really. She wrote some really good books. They were very just kind of like I was trying to tell all of these. They were very plain, black and white. Here's what we know. Here are the stories that we have heard. Nothing else really to it in terms of investigating or whatever. But she did believe there was a ghost inside her home in Selma that she referred to as Jeffrey. So if you wonder what the Jeffrey is, that's who Jeffrey is. And the 13 Mississippi ghosts, Georgia ghosts, so forth, so on, the Tennessee ghosts, she always includes Jeffrey, and there's a preface. I know in the 13 Alabama Ghost book
Mhm.
of Jeffrey, so there's a little detail you can read too. Dr. Alan Brown, he was a professor at the University of West Alabama. He helped me out with, in particular, the Jasper radio station story, as well as a few others. But he has several books out there, one of which that I pull from a lot, The Haunting of Alabama. He's got another one that's called Ghost Hunters of the South, that goes around different southeastern states, where he went with a lot of paranormal groups on their investigations. It's a pretty big book. I didn't put any of that in here because it wasn't any specific story. It was just about the happenings when people would go and do their investigations. It's a pretty interesting book too. And of course, TikToker. This guy's fairly popular, and I still see him a lot. Joshua Darren, I think that's how you pronounce it on TikTok. He has just a lot of different Southernisms to a great degree, little stories. But a lot of what he did, at least last year, had a lot to do with ghost stories. I think he still does a lot of stuff like that too. So there
Mhm.
you have it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's
Very
nice.
nice.
So yeah, that's that.
And Nixie, I actually checked, and I don't think that place is for sale in Jasper.
Oh, okay.
It's not up for sale anymore. So maybe somebody bought it.
I need to drive by there. I know exactly where it is. It's hard to miss if you know where to look. It's right behind a shopping center that's just off 78, which was not there when the house was built. Of course, it was in southern slang, highfalutin of an area, because it was next to the Bankhead house. I mean, it's like, it was not next to it; it's a block away from it. So that was a pretty happening spot to live in back in those days. And that house was a very nice house back then. So, but a lot of people in Jasper don't realize that's there and the story behind it.
Spooky.
That is really cool.
Well,
All those stories were great.
Thank you.
Not to steal any thunder from Nixie, but I actually have two stories as well.
Oh, look at
two
you.
little things as well. If it's okay, if I can bring those to the table.
Sure, encroach on his fame. That's fine.
Like I said, I'm not out to steal his thunder at all, because I always look forward to this every year when we do.
Cry in the corner over here now.
Let's see. Give me just a second here, and I will.
You're going to share?
Yeah, I'm going to share.
Oh, you can pull
Here
stuff
you
up?
go. Yeah, I got some stuff to share here.
All right. And by the way, something really neat, you want to talk about history and everything. Nixie's grandfather wrote in a whole bunch of journals and ledgers from like the 30s and 40s and all. And he brought some of those over to the house last night. And we got to thumb through those. That man was meticulous in his details.
Very much so. Yeah.
My God, was he meticulous?
Yeah, there's a lot of history.
Started out as just bookkeeping on his part to keep up with all the expenses of everything. Excuse me, I had to mute because I was going to start coughing my head off. But he kept up with a lot of everything outside just financial stuff, and it's crazy that I still have it. He had them from 1936 until he passed in 1988.
Wow.
Yeah,
they were really interesting to look at.
Really cool to read. Because he brought a ledger from 1939, and my mom was born September 10th, 1939, and I went through his ledger and got to see what was happening in his grandfather's world the day my mom was born.
What was like the biggest price shock, or was there anything?
Groceries.
Yeah. Gas and groceries, of course.
We'll let Jess talk first. I will dig that up because I have one handy.
Have you heard the legend of the dead children's playground, Nixie?
Yes.
He's saying yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He muted himself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes. So just adjacent to the Maple Hill Cemetery in Huntsville, there's what's called the Dead Children's Playground. Here's Maples Hill Cemetery, if you can see that. We'll go back to the picture there with the nice little playground. And so how did this innocent place get such a gruesome name? So according to legend, many children who died in Huntsville during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic are buried in Maple Hill plots adjoining the playground. The spirits of those children, some say, come out after dark to run and play, as they may have in life. So they just want to get out and what?
Who builds a playground next to a cemetery?
Well, I mean, I guess it happens.
Someone pretty messed
Strange
up.
and unusual.
What?
They wanted something to happen in that playground.
Creeping kids out 101, baby.
Yeah.
That playground is made out of pure selenium. I bet you that's a Shandor creation.
It's the circle of life.
Well, it says that the playground is surrounded on 3 sides by the limestone that formed many caves in the area, giving it a shadowed appearance that lends itself to spooky legends. According to
That's
this.
limestone is redneck selenium, so that's what
All right, and I'm going to go and I'm going to go to my other photo here. Give me just 1 second while I switch the pictures here.
By the way, this heat in this house feels fantastic right now. We finally turned on our heat for the first time to knock that smell off for when it gets really cold.
Yeah, I need to do that myself.
Yeah, it feels good right now.
All right. So the picture that I have pulled up here is what is known as the Hell's Gate Bridge, which is in Oxford, Alabama.
Oh, I know this.
Which we almost got to see.
We almost did. Apparently, of course, the bridge is in terrible condition. You can't drive over it anymore.
You can't drive to it.
Yeah, and you can't drive
as
to
we
it.
learned.
Yeah. So I'd seen a picture of the bridge with the concrete barriers right there directly in front of the bridge. But there's also the road that you would turn down to go to the bridge. There's also some concrete barrier there. So we could not get access to it, driving to it.
Yeah, we could have walked, but we were trying to get back home because we were tired.
Yeah, and I can't really judge based on where that barrier is versus how long you have to, trek to get to the bridge. So
if you're
If
curious,
they bothered to put
Publix.
concrete,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just saying it's behind Publix.
Yeah.
In Oxford, over there near that really nice shopping center.
Yeah.
If they put a set of concrete barriers up, and then they had to put another set of concrete barriers up, they don't want you to go there, so it's best just to stay away.
Yeah, that's an indication. Just don't even bother.
Yeah.
Just don't come down this way. So of course, just like a lot of haunted bridges, the legend of Hell's Gate Bridge is that sometime in the 1950s, a young couple's car drove off the bridge and into the water. The legend is that the stories that have come out is that if you stop on the bridge and turn off your lights, a member of the couple will enter your vehicle and leave a wet spot on the seat. So it's just your typical haunted bridge story.
Whoa.
Yeah, and if they do that, you're going to leave a wet spot on your seat.
But of
Jess,
course,
can you say that again? You said a member of the couple?
Well, that's what it's. That's what the legend says. I'm just gonna. Okay, so like a ghost is gonna get in your car. One of the we don't know which one of the couple, the man or the woman, gets in the car. One of them.
That's a bit of a saucy story there. If we're gonna go with that.
Oh, I see where you're going there, sir. This is a PG podcast. Okay?
Hey, you said it.
I'm just reading the article, and it does say a member. It does say a member of the couple. So blame somebody else for the way this was written out.
We knew Jess would be reading this at one point.
Yeah.
There have been paranormal investigations at the bridge that I guess that particular investigation didn't come up with anything or find anything. But of course, this is a story, one of those local legend stories that goes on throughout the years. And of course, people say the condition, how the bridge looks makes them think of the gates of like going into the gates of hell. So yeah.
Sweet.
Is there a Yelp review that you would like
to read? Disappointed. No member of the couple got in my vehicle.
Oh boy.
I blame Kevin.
Someone just got in my car. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Highly disappointed. Does not
0
recommend.
out of 5 stars.
Was not spooked. No wet seat.
Oh my
No wet
goodness.
spot on the seat of my car.
Let's just end that conversation.
We're slipping back into Patreon territory here.
Yeah.
Look, it is. I just love bringing content to the table that
Yes,
y'all
you do.
y'all just crack up and laugh at.
Yes.